Senior year, I would say I kind of took a step back in terms of how intense I was with graphic design. I shifted my priorities to making sure I actually graduate, take care of all my final, degree requirements and general education credits and all that good stuff. And then I would say what really actually became my main priority was just enjoying and spending time with the amazing people and community that I got to, be a part of at BU, from the people in my design cohort. And I got to give a special shout out to the family tree. And then, all the people that I was able to, become friends with all the way from freshman through senior year. And so, I wanted to prioritize just, enjoying life and, making memories and spending time, with people, because I felt like, and I feel like I felt comfortable doing that senior year because I had already laid like the groundwork and foundation all the previous years, all the hard work I had put, into growing my online presence. But even then, I still decided to take on another internship my fall of senior year. And it was honestly, it was mainly because I needed some internship credit for my minor in arts leadership, or with a concentration in entrepreneurship. And so I was actually able to run it back with Harvard football. And so when I had my Harvard football internship the first time, it was during COVID. So I was back home doing everything completely remote. But, during my senior year, when I had the internship, I, was able to commute to Harvard campus, which is not too far from BU. So I didn't have to go like in all the time, but I would go in like at least, I think it was only like once a week. That was really, another great experience of seeing what it's like to, work in an office environment. But yeah, in general, I feel like, I was able to continue to grow my Photoshop and Illustrator skills in this position with making graphics. And then I would say the best project that I ended up doing with my experience at Harvard football was this mock Harvard football rebrand. So that was a cool, kind of a cool project to finish out my experience with them. And now looking at my classes, my senior year in graphic design, in the fall, they were a lot more collaborative. Our first project was Impact and Empathy, where basically we explored a social issue and had to design our project and several deliverables around that issue. And so my group, we ended up landing on the issue of data privacy, with like the initial interest being in cookies on web browsers. I'm sure you've gone, on the internet and seen like, the website will be like, do you want to accept these cookies? And it's like, obviously for the most part, you just click accept. You're like, okay, who wants to reject cookies, right? But, we were just kind of thinking like, wait, like, what are these cookies that we're accepting actually? And, kind of diving into that. And something that was really cool that we got to do as part of our project is we actually made fortune cookies. So, think about that, like in a graphic design class, we got to make fortune cookies as part of our project. Like where else, does that kind of get to happen? But yeah, it was interesting for sure. I had a lot of burnt fingertips in the process of making the cookies, but yeah, basically, the cookies were relating to the idea of like magic cookies and how they capture your information. Some of the other deliverables that we made was a large cookbook that was really like an informational kind of publication about the ins and outs of data privacy, data mining, all that stuff. And then we also had a very interesting little kind of like surveillance video that we had taken of the class to kind of represent how you're always being watched, when you're on the internet. But yeah, that was a really cool project to open the year with. And then for the next project, it was sight and sound, which, very much as the name implies, the project was based off of creating visuals that responded to sound. This project was definitely challenging because, for one, in terms of the visuals, we could only use typography, so we couldn't use any images. And then the other challenge was that everything was made using the risograph, which I'm not going to dive into this video because that's a whole process. But the results, I would say, were quite cool though, getting to combine the analog prints of the Rezo with animation, and also like the print deliverables as well that were made out of it. And then our last project for the fall semester was Thoughts on Thesis, which was going to be leading into the thesis project, which is the only project that we did for the for the spring of senior year, and in the final semester. And so for Thoughts on Thesis, I already had a strong idea of what my thesis was going to be, because like I had mentioned earlier, I had already defined branded myself as the people's designer. And then I had this question that came to mind of, what does it actually look like to be the people's designer, or to, be a designer for the people? Another thing that really influenced me pursuing this topic was a design theory class that I was taking that same senior fall with Yael, who was a professor that I had sophomore year as well. We had a lot of great conversations in that class, especially thinking about the why behind design and the purpose behind certain projects, and really reshaping how we think about design as contemporary designers. And another thing I actually just want to say about Yael very quickly is that I'm very thankful that she pushed me to kind of expand my creative interests out of the world of sports. Because in the beginning of my sophomore year, outside of doing sports artwork for my personal work, I also was creating sports content for my design classes. And she had just kind of, nudged me and was kind of like, hey, you're a very strong designer. And one of the things she had said was that I have, kind of a knack for being able to tell stories with my designs. And so she was just kind of like, what would it look like if maybe we applied that outside of the world of football and sports? I think I found that I was drawn to creating around ideas relating to culture, and I would say social issues as well, which then plays into my senior thesis and exploration of what it means to be a designer for the people. And so I made the connection between being the people's designer and addressing social issues, and seeing how design can be, sort of a facilitator in that space. Not necessarily I'm coming in as the hero and saving and solving anything, because that's kind of naive to think that way. But seeing how design can play a role in, facilitating tangible change, I think was what I kind of my eye was kind of open to, and kind of the direction I saw the people's designer going in eventually. And so fast forward to senior thesis in the spring of 2023, I ended up focusing on what it means to be the people's designer through service, collaboration, and storytelling, with the underlying topic of addressing social issues that were presently affecting my community, which was the BU community at that time. So I focused on just my peers at BU. And so in order to do that, I actually had sent out a survey to literally, I think it was close to 700 people via Instagram DM. I ended up getting around 350 responses back. And so that gave me a very large pool of answers, and I think a wide representation of, what issues people were kind of seeing as being needed to be talked about more, or not being addressed enough in, mainstream media. And then I made a 700 plus page book with, all those responses, along with articles relating to the topics. And then also if people gave any solutions to those problems, I included them in the book as well. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna make a full video on my senior thesis project eventually, because it relates to the whole idea of for the people, which was the title of my project. Also on my hat, if you want to get one for yourself from the Peace OC, from the peaceoc.com store. But to invest so much time into one project was something I'd never really done before. There was so much research and thought that went into creating the final deliverables for my project, which were that 700 page book, another I think 150 200 page book, along with the senior thesis book. And then I also created merch that was specific to the project, and also did like a collaborative photo project. So I did like a lot of different things for this, senior thesis as a whole. And I think I just learned a lot about what it takes to really be a designer for the people, and the labor that goes into it, and how to be really intentional with, design. And I think, yeah, that's something I'm definitely going to explore more, in the future. And yeah, I mean, senior thesis went very, very well. We had an awesome show and everything. And then, yeah, then came graduation. Graduated with my BFA in graphic design, like I said earlier, and a minor in arts leadership, and with a concentration in entrepreneurship.